Now, last year, Brazil's Business 20, or B20, put a list of 24 recommendations before President Lula da Silva, outlining key priorities for the G20's main stage. South Africa's own B20 is said to do the same and is hosting a recommendations handover event in Sandton today. Business reporter Ntokozo Khumalo is there and joins us live now. Ntokozo, the economy, as we've been speaking, has been shifting from resilient and trying to find stability to a more uncertain and fragmented path. Are we likely to see an even longer list of recommendations from the B20 due to the changing environment?
Good morning, Arabile. Certainly that could have that impact, but I am with the man who is tasked with that delicate task of finding the right balancing act of ensuring that those key priority areas for the global south are put squarely on the table, while also ensuring of getting that buy-in from member states, and that's the B20 Sherpa, Cas Coovadia. Thank you so much for talking to us. And as we just said, it's a delicate time in the global economy, really. So I imagine you had quite a delicate task that you faced in shaping those recommendations. With all the global context that's going on, was it a difficult task?
Thank you for having me, and it's great to be here today. Look, obviously a difficult task even without the global context, because we had over 1,000 C-suite business people in 8 task forces, and we had to try and reach recommendations that actually are actionable and that make sense. So we were absolutely clear that we don't want to get into consensus paralysis. We want to have good discussions, arrive at recommendations that make sense. Obviously, the global context was discussed. And we were very fortunate from a B20 point of view that, for instance, C-suite people from America participated in the task forces. And they have actually signed off on the recommendations as well. We handing over the recommendations today, and we decided to do that fairly early before the summit, so that we spend the next 2 months advocating for those recommendations and promoting those recommendations. But it's been a difficult task, but it's been a very productive one, and we think the recommendations are going to make a significant difference if implemented, not just in Africa's future and investment into Africa and growth of Africa, but the third world, the countries in the south, and the globe itself.
Absolutely. And I suppose Brazil did get the ball rolling with some of their recommendations, that list of 24, including issues such as employment, growing the economy, infrastructure, and so on. Precarious position South Africa is right now with its relationship with the United States, that is the G20 president next year. Any concern that some of the work done by Brazil and now B20 South Africa might be reversed in terms of the priorities that are focused on?
Well, there is concern, simply because of the noises coming from the U.S. administration. But that's something for the G20 presidency to deal with, and we know that they are conversing with the U.S. administration. We know that some people from the U.S. administration have participated in some of the G20 work streams. So hopefully they'll make progress on that. From a B20 point of view, we are working with the American Chamber of Commerce in Washington, to whom we hand over. We're working very closely with them to make it as less difficult as possible for them to promote the recommendations that are coming out. And we will continue to work with them going into the new year once they've taken over, because we are committed to following up on these recommendations, ensuring that they are actually applied and what the impact of those recommendations are. And that's the first time that the B20 is going to be doing that. So we're working very closely with them. We will also work closely with the next host of the B20 in 2027, once those are announced. And hopefully we can, between Brazil, ourselves, and the next 2 hosts, we can begin to actually track these recommendations, measure impact, so that businesses are actually confident that the deliberations they've been involved in will actually bear fruit.
And just talking about that sort of accountability, keeping track of the impact that's being made, one of the engagement groups, the Y20 being the youth 20, struggling to come to an agreement and issue a communique, and the issues being around the issue of setting out a council to be able to track that impact. Will the B20 be stepping in there to perhaps offer advice, being an influential engagement group within G20?
Well, we've interacted quite productively with Y20 and with W20. We also interacted with M20, the Media 20. We believe that it's important for business to interact with these groups. Where we can facilitate, where we can assist, obviously we will do that. But ultimately, I think if we are successful at the B20 in putting together some sort of mechanism to track progress, to measure impact, we're more than happy to share that with any other 20 that wants to do that. So in our discussions with Y20, W20, and others, they know that we want to do this, and obviously we will continue with those discussions. And we will also brief the American Chamber of Commerce in Washington, for instance, that, look, these have been our relationships with some of the other 20s, and would they be able to actually continue that through their hosting period.
And Cas, before I let you go, it seems a little bit topsy-turvy when we focus on Africa and then South Africa playing that role of putting the priorities. The rest of Africa seeming to edge out a lot more growth than South Africa. We are having the GDP numbers out next week. Unemployment is soaring. Can you give us just an indication of what the key priority areas are for the B20 that you feel strongly should be pushed on this G20?
Well, firstly, just to say that we have been absolutely clear that the focus of this B20 is the continent. And a number of C-suite people from the continent outside of South Africa are participating in the task forces. Some of them are co-chairing the task forces. So African C-suite people, business people, have been involved in those discussions. I think that while putting Africa at the center of the agenda, we also want to promote our country, but the recommendations that come out are essentially B20 recommendations, so representing business in all the G20 countries. Some of the critical issues are trade and investment, where we're saying open economies, multilateral trade, use of reset multilateral institutions, so they need to be restructured. We're promoting the African Continental Free Trade Area as a critical instrument for trade on the continent. Financing, financing of infrastructure, blended financing, public-private partnerships to put into place financing structures that actually make sense for the continent and countries in the South, including how rating agencies look at some of the risk areas, and we're commenting on that. Then energy mix. And energy mix and moving towards clean energy, but with just transition being a critical issue, given the issues in our country, on the continent, and elsewhere, and what the impact of Ukraine and others have had on the globe's movement towards clean energy. And then we've added a task team on industrialization. And we believe that's critical for this continent, critical for our country. We need to reindustrialize. We need to have beneficiation. We need to ensure that the raw materials we have are converted into finished products, and those are exported. So industrialization is critical.
Thank you, Cas, so much. We, of course, will be hearing a lot more, Arabile, from Cas Coovadia as he takes the stage at about 10 o'clock when the event does kick off. Some, of course, of those recommendations that Cas does mention probably sounding very familiar to you, because they were also, some of the themes that Brazil had as well. So just talking to the ongoing work with putting some of those issues issues squarely on the table to be dealt with. And in South Africa's context, of course, issues around fast-tracking economic growth and dealing with high unemployment, one of the issues that South Africans will be looking out for on how the B20 deals around that. But Arabile, the program does start at 10 o'clock, and we'll keep updates on the rest of the recommendations on the table this year.
Implementation and action being key to those conversations. Ntokozo, thank you so much for giving us that update out of the B20 this morning.